Welcome to episode 215 of the Reptile Gumbo podcast. I forgot to put our video up on the main screen there.
I wonder why the screen was all black. I was like, I don't know what's happening.
I was like, why am I not on the screen? There it is. Yeah, episode 215 of the Reptile Gumbo podcast.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop. It's me and Katie. Maybe Robert.
Oh, our guest just got here.
We'll bring our guest in after we do our intro stuff.
Perfect.
Hopefully Robert will be joining us. I haven't heard from him in a while. He was doing some stuff for work.
Yeah, he got caught up. He was at Huntsville's like, what, an hour from here?
It's a ways away.
Yeah.
So he may or may not be here. I hope he's here.
Oh, I accidentally left the gate open on the door. There's a Mildred underneath our table. Out.
There we go. She's out. All right, you want to do some intro stuff?
Sure.
Go for it.
Lil's Shop of Horrors operates a commercial feeder breeder facility based out of San Antonio, Texas. They specialize in rats, mice, dubia roaches, Madagascar hissing cockroaches, and more. As feeder breeders, they focus on the nutritional needs of the animals that consume them. They provide feeders for everyone from first-time keepers with one snake to large-scale breeding operations with many animals, as well as supplying pet shops. So no order is too small or too large. If you're looking to place an order, feel free to contact them through any of their social media pages at Lil's Shop of Horrors or email them directly.
Yeah. And Lewis is in the chat. And again, thanks to Lewis over at Lil's Shop of Horrors for our giveaway for last month, for giving away the cockroaches, 500 dubia roaches, along with our friends at Reddy's Rainforest for giving away their awesome feeder fuel to feed the cockroaches. Our buddy Nathan is going to be getting those. So excited about that. Also, Herp's Reptile shows. The next big one is Conroe, Texas, June 8th. So in less than a month from now in Conroe. So come out to Conroe, see us. I'll be there both days. Katie will be there probably Sunday only.
I think I might be there Saturday evening because I think I have to pick her up from camp early that morning. So I have to drive to Galveston, pick her up and get her home. Gotcha. And then I can come to Conroe.
Gotcha. So yeah, that is June 8th, June 9th. Longview, Texas, June 22nd, 23rd. Slidell, Louisiana, July 20th, 21st. Sulphur, Louisiana. That's the Lake Charles show. Sulphur, Louisiana, July 27th, 28th. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, August 3rd, August 4th. Down to Corpus Christi, Texas for August 10th, August 11th. Bryan College Station, Texas, August 17th, August 18th. And then over to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, August 24th and 25th. All those August dates give me chills because that's when we're back in school. I'm waiting like a week and a half to be out of school.
8 days.
Yeah. And those dates are like when we're back in school. So let's not rush through the summer dates. Also, again, shout out to our friends at Reddy's Rainforest. Not really a sponsor, but I like them, and we got this chameleon from them. So
we have the podcast chameleon because that's kind of what he is.
Yeah, if you're looking for an awesome panther chameleon, you can't go better than Reddy's Rainforest, which we get to see them on Saturday, right? We're going to have to eat with them on Saturday.
Well, I got to confirm that, but yes.
We're hoping to go eat with them on Saturday. They're coming into Houston for a show. Also coming into Houston is our friends over at Next Level Displays, who we had on a few episodes back. I just purchased my rack from them today. I'll get them later this week for my boa that may or may never have babies. She's definitely pregnant. She just is going to stay pregnant for eternity, apparently. I have a camera on her, and I watch her constantly. Like, constantly. Like, it's pulled up on my computer at school.
We actually watched her in class the other day because I was telling the kids about her and they were like, "Oh, let's see." So we pulled up the camera to watch her do nothing in class.
She at least move around?
Nope. She was curled up when we watched her. They were like, "Oh, she looks so big." I'm like, "Yeah, she's pretty uncomfortable."
Yep. She'll move around for a while and then she'll curl back up underneath the heat and she's never going to have babies. But yeah, so I get to pick up that rack this week. I'm excited about that. Check out the racks from Next Level Displays. I love my display I use from them. So I'm sure I'll love my rack from them. Just a shout out to our friends over at Focus Cubes. Again, our sign, I got our sign lighting up again. So you can see our sign back here, made by our friends over at Focus Cube. They make amazing cages. And then if anybody sees my Simply Serpent sign over here, that's Robert made that for me. I finally got that hung up after, I don't know, probably a year and a half. But it's on the wall now. And if you need LED UVB light bulbs, check out VivTech products. Go over, check out VivTech. People over there are amazing. If you use code GUMBO22, you'll save 15% on your LED UV bulbs, which will last you 4 years or more. All of our animals in this room, all these lizards, are on LED UVB bulbs from VivTech. You can also get halogen bulbs, which I'm using over here on my blue tongue. You can also get smart devices like cameras and sensors for humidity and temperature and all of that. So go over there, use code GUMBO22, save 15% on that. We haven't done a giveaway for this month. Are we going to do a giveaway?
You got multiple things over
Let's
there.
go with this one. We'll put up what we're going to do, what you have to do for the giveaway. But it's a Lego set. And the reason it's reptile related is there's a sea turtle.
It's so cute.
So we'll put up what you got to do to win this. It'll be on our Facebook page. But that's going to be the giveaway. I'm going to set it right up. That's not going to work, is it?
Nope.
Right there? No.
But now they can't see you.
Yep. So let's set it back here in front of Robert if he ever shows up. But yeah, you can win that. Got anything else going on? Anything animal related?
We deep cleaned some cages at school today because let's do that while I have child labor.
Yeah, let's bring home clean cages.
And clean cages are coming home. Exactly. So now we get to figure out where they're gonna go here in the house. Yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't know where they're going because we have animals
everywhere.
In every room.
So yep.
There's no room in here now because this is not a lizard room. And I'm loving my blue tongue skink. So I
could put one over here.
That's true.
And put one over there on that table.
So
but I don't know that I want to bring 2 lizards from school into this room.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
Like, will they?
Your lizards, I mean, they're not new to our collection. Like they've been at your school.
Yeah.
We're good. All right.
Anyways, we'll figure it out.
Let's get over to our guest. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully Robert joins. I haven't heard from him in a while. So hopefully he's still alive.
I'm sure.
You're sure? Positive?
I'm sure there's traffic and he's driving the new thing for work. And
all right. So our guest tonight, I'm excited because I've wanted to have our guest on for a while because he breeds one of my favorite snakes on earth that I don't own. But our guest tonight, if I can get my mouse here, is Bill Hughes. How's it going, Bill?
Good. Is my mic working?
Yep, we can hear you. Good.
Okay. I'm not a tech pro at this stuff, so I'm honored to be asked to come on.
I'm excited. I've stalked you on Facebook for a long time.
He has talked about this nonstop for a few days.
Well, and we'll get to my favorite species. We'll find out a little bit about you, and then we'll get to my favorite species that you have, and then some other really cool species that you have.
I'll just follow your lead.
So, a brief overview of what you keep, because you have a variety of stuff and some kind of things that people aren't that used to. What do you keep now?
Okay, so right now I have pretty big groups of both Western and Eastern Senzinia, the Madagascan tree boas. I've got a reverse trio of Madagascan ground boas. I think I have 1.3 Loxocemus bicolor, the New World burrowing pythons.
Cool.
A whole bunch of Sonata California mountain king snakes, which are all locality specific. And a ton of the Ruschenberg's tree boas, the Corallus ruschenbergeri, that are not really well represented in this country. They're like Amazon tree boas, bigger, nastier cousin. They're much bigger. Well, all my original animals are wild-caught imports. So figure if you had a 7-foot wild-caught Amazon tree boa, that's what they are. But they're they're 5 times more aggressive.
Jesus. Yeah, you sent me some pictures of the night. I did not realize how big bodied they were, especially for an arboreal snake.
Yeah, they're more like I was telling you, like a Mullican scrub in size. Yeah. And really
kind of look like it too.
Yeah. And just there's just so few of them in the hobby, which is immediately draws me to it because I like the challenge of dealing with stuff. And so every behavior, every mistake, every success, it's all part of that learning kitty that hopefully people like myself will benefit from, and then being able to share it to others down the road. But it's keeping these Ruschenbergs is kind of like it was when I was keeping Senzinia 15, 18 years ago. Back then, no one knew what Senzinia were. A lot of guys bailed out of them because they couldn't get them to breed, or if they did, there was really no interest in them. Of course, it was a completely different landscape, 15, 20 years ago than today.
Yeah.
In those days when I first got mine, it was off kingsnake.com.
Gotta love the days of King Snake.
Yeah. And I mean, and at the time of my life, I was so broke that I bought my first trio of Westerns on a payment plan, on an installment plan.
Yeah,
But
that's
even
awesome.
then, no one knew what they were. And boy, things have changed. There's with the advent of social media. I've said this a million times. I grew up being that's that weird kid Billy that likes snakes, or my brothers would say that's my stupid kid brother who's afflicted with reptiles.
Oh my gosh,
And-
I love it.
And then with social media, you find out you're not alone. That there are thousands and thousands of people across the globe who are just as afflicted as you are. And it's when I post pictures and I post things on Facebook, it's just out of exuberance. It's just, the day I don't get a thrill going out to my snake buildings is the day I wrap it up. I'm done.
I agree. I 100% agree with that because, yeah, I can totally see that being you.
It's funny because it's such a weird hobby because, there's such a variety of reptiles in the hobby. And the hobby tends to only focus on, like five species, but there's so many out there. I go into my snake room and I go in there, and one that really makes me excited every time I see it are my rubber boas, right? The normal person sees a rubber boa and goes, well, it's a worm. Them. But it was a childhood fantasy to have them. I now have some of them, and yes, are they boring? 100%. They're not the most exciting snake in the world.
No, I specifically go herping for them every year. I
want to so bad.
I have great spots for them, but I know I don't have any snakes in my house. That's just an agreed to caveat with my wife. No reptiles in the house. I have a separate outbuilding. And other than that, she's very, very, she gives me a lot of latitude. But I know that they won't do well for me in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And I can't incur an extra $200 a month electric bill to keep them cool enough when I have 60 other snakes in that building that don't want it that cool.
Yes.
So I know enough about them, even though I love them, it makes no sense for me to try. It wouldn't be fair to them if I kept them.
That was
good for you for having that and sticking to it though.
And
there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there though that'll get something just because they want it, even though they can't do right by that animal.
I can't tell you how many I've picked up and just taken pictures and looked at, and every fiber of my being wanted to bring them home, and I just know better. So at least I've gotten somewhat mature in my old age in that regard.
With everything aquatic and everything that eats fruit flies.
Yeah, I look at fruit frogs.
If it eats fruit flies, we're like, nope, you got to go back on the table.
I get poison dart frogs. I'm like, those are cool on this table, not in my house. I know I'm not going to do fruit flies. I can't do it.
Right.
It would not be fun for me. But I think they're a cool frog. Or there's a lot of turtles. I'd love to have some turtles, but I just don't want to deal with water. I know I couldn't do it. Right, it would get gross. And I would. I know my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse are slow moving, small slug-like boas. I'll take all my sand boas, my rubber boas. That is my wheelhouse. They fit my personality. Whereas some people would look, the Russian burger are going to be a more to handle than say a Kenyan sand boa, right? There's more to having to go in and take a Russian burger out of the cage than if I take a Kenyan sand boa out of the cage.
I mean, just changing the water bowl with them is a planned event. You can't they are the most reactive snakes I've ever had in my life. I've had emeralds, I've had green tree pythons, all the arboreal snakes that have the reputation of being nasty. But even they will give you, emeralds are nothing compared to these. I mean, they know immediately when you open the door, even in the daytime when you think they'd be, quote, asleep. They have gotten better in the 2 years that I've had them. But, one of the ones I got as an import was Gravid. And she gave me 19 babies, which was a completely free bonus.
Wow.
And they're not a whole lot nicer than their parent. I mean, if I take them out to clean, if I reach in with you have to have gloves on. If they don't feel or sense a heat signature, you're fine. But just to clean the cage, I got to take them out of the cage and either put them in a tub, or depending on the weather, I can put them in a pistachio tree out front and clean the cage, clean the water bowl, then get a hook and bring them back in. Then I got to leave the building or they'll bash their faces against the glass.
Jeez.
Takes them about 30 minutes to cool back down.
So they're a far more active arboreal than, say, an emerald, right? Because emeralds
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
are just going to kind of sit there. They're going to sit there and look at you, but they're not coming for you.
No, these are actively coming for you. And they've got, she's about a 4-foot female out, and I used my quad trailer tailgate. You can hang them there and they'll just stay there for an hour while whatever you're doing. And I walked up to her with my cell phone to take a picture, and she struck so fast and hit the phone right out of my hand.
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute
Sure.
because it was a very long day in 4th grade, so I'm struggling with focusing today. What is on the wall behind you? Is that a painting or a hanging or?
It's a painting. It's a painting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, it's the depth in it. I'm like, does this make what is going on behind him?
It kind of makes it look 3D.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
It's a painting
fabulous.
of a bridge.
I love
Thanks.
it. But I was just like, it was a long day in 4th grade, but anyways, okay, please continue.
So-
I apologize.
So really that's, I do have some Amazon tree boas too, just kind of as a side thing, just because I like them. But that's pretty much the bulk of my collection. I think.
Gotcha. Did I see? Okay, I was going through several of your pictures, and I just saw a pattern. I couldn't tell if it was for sure, and I don't think it was. I don't know anybody. Do you have? Was it bromeliad boas?
I have one.
Okay, then I was right because that thing looks awesome. I've
Yeah.
never seen one in person. How is
Galeophis.
it to take care of it?
Strict lizard feeders. I have
Oh.
not been able to get scented onto rodents at all. But living here in Vegas and traveling often to SoCal for work, getting feeder lizards has never been a hassle. So I've never been forced to really hunker down and sent them over. I'm sure it has and can be done. I haven't had the need to do it.
So do you
And,
order lizards like everybody
No.
else orders mice? How does that work?
No, I just go out and noose local lizards when I need to.
Huh.
Yeah.
I mean, can you order lizards like you do mice?
Yeah, you
or
can order a
no, or-
nose.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can
I
or-
didn't know. I was like, I've never thought about this.
Yeah, but then you got to feed the feeders. That's just a pain in the ass. So
Because they're not frozen. It's not a frozen thawed
no,
situation
you
like
get
with the
it's like
mice.
buying a box
Yeah.
of live crickets, except they're
Oh,
50
but
or 60
they're live
moles.
lizards. Ugh, that could be
That's
rough.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're it's kind of like the Loxocemus. Although the Galeophis are arboreal, they're kind of cryptic, almost like a fossorial snake, like the Loxocemus are. I call that whole group that I have kind of like your rubber boas. They're kind of the coolest snakes you never see.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with
Great way to
the
describe them.
it's the same thing with the Loxocemus, and it's the same thing with the Galeophis. I rarely see them, and I only have one rack. I like to give my philosophy with all my animals is to give them enough room to where they have temperature options, hide
Yeah.
options, and let them dictate what they want, not the other way around. So I have one rack for some smaller Sonata, the California Mountain Kings, but once they get to adults, I'll bring them out into like a 2-foot by 1 foot by 1 foot, more of a display type cage, which gives them, they can go to heat if they want it. They can go to a damp hide if they want it. They can go to a dry hide if they want it, or they can go to the cool side of the cage if they want it. And I let them tell me what they want. I think it's better to over cage than under cage. That's just my personal philosophy. That's all.
Oh no, I get it.
That's pretty cool though.
So I've it's weird. I've definitely done that with lizards. I've gotten several lizards lately, and
These lizards are so
And the cages-
just over the top. I love it though. Don't
the
get me
majority
wrong.
of my collection is sand boas, and I have some boa constrictors, and they're in your more general setup. Sand boas, I have them in racks. My boas are in, my big adults are in like 4x2 by 18s or whatever. They're in cages, and then I got the lizards, and I was like, I've got this one all decorated out for a 4x2x2, and all it's got is a blue tongue in there, and I got this big one over here for a panther chameleon. I know that I can't do that with my snakes because I have 100 and something snakes, and I can't fit a ton of cages in my small room. But I would like to give them. But with a samboa, I know they would climb. You know, people always give me the crap about having samboas. They're like, well, why do you have it? You never see it. I'm like, well, if you take it out, you see it. I mean, you just got to go in there and take it out. And I get it. You can put it in a 4x2x2, and it would probably climb on something at some point. I'm not calling it arboreal. I don't care what people want to say.
There's a point where it's overkill for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. And it's, lots and lots, thousands of people have, tons of racks, and they produce tons of animals, and, it works for them. It's just, like I said, I have the luxury of having a dedicated building wherein I can house them in a way I think that suits them.
Oh yeah. The Stygian Exotics in the chat said samboas climb. I agree. They will definitely climb. I'm still not going to say they're arboreal because some people will be like, you got to give them branches. Look, I've seen my samboas. They could fall off. They could fall off the ground if it was possible. I mean, they are
anything.
If we circle back to Sanzinia, the older they get, the less arboreal they become. They're called Madagascan tree boas, but anyone who's worked with them for any length of time, especially the westerns, when they get up to 6 feet long and really, really heavy bodied, they're not climbing very much. I'd say if they ascend into the trees in Madagascar, it's at very low elevation.
So that's one thing I wanted to bring up. So Katie and I used to work at a zoo in Louisiana. And I've told the story on the show. Several people have heard it. At one point, my director gave me the AZA list. I was like, hey, what do you want to get off this list? And there were 2 Sanzinia on there and a blackhead. And I was like, I can't afford any of these. Let's get them. And I don't think they ever went on display. If they did, it was for a very short period. We had nowhere to really put them. But I got to have.
They were strictly gotten just for James.
Yeah, just like a play.
They really were.
But
Very
I got
cool.
this in, and that's when I realized I was like, tree boa is not what it's green, but that's about kind of where it ends. Like they rarely ever wanted to sit on a branch or go up. Most people think tree boa, they think emeralds, or they think something like green tree pythons.
Weren't they on exhibit for a while in the Africa exhibit?
No, they were
next to the Gaboon Viper.
Yeah,
they were in that little exhibit.
Yeah,
I do remember when they were on exhibit.
They didn't climb.
Now.
Huge cage.
No, yeah.
And they sat on the ground and didn't go up in the branches that much.
No, I mean, I have my adults in Habitat Systems caging, and I think the dimensions, they're 4 foot long, 30 inches deep, and 30 inches high. And there's a basking shelf with a radiant heat panel in one corner, and depending on breeding's a whole nother scenario, but, I've got a probe on that basking shelf at 83 degrees. And again, the rest of the cage, they can move around, but most of the time they prefer to be on the ground in the cooler end of the cage.
Yeah. It's that's what I said. It's misleading for people when they hear tree boa. I'm like, that's not a snake you want if you're wanting the typical 2x2x2 cube and a branch, and it sits there in the middle and you stare at it like maybe an emerald or a green tree.
Right.
It's not going to do that.
Completely
but I'm cool
different.
with that. To me, it is one of the coolest looking snakes. And so I guess we'll get into it. If you'll tell everybody the difference, there are Easterns and there are Westerns. If you'll tell everybody the difference between the two.
Well, they're 2 distinct subspecies.
Yeah.
And you've got a mountain range that not bisects, but traverses the entire country of the island. And on the western side of the island, it's very arid and dry. And you have the Western subspecies, and they've evolved to be more a dun color, beige, brown. Then on the eastern side of the island, because the western side's in the rain shadow of the mountain range, the eastern side is where you have the tropical jungle, and you have a green snake, basically, compared to a brown snake. It's just evolution. And it's kind of the same thing with the Dumerils ground boas and the Madagascan ground boas. The Dumerils being on the western side of the island are smaller, and they're much more neutral colored, if you will. When you get to the ground boas on the eastern side of the island, they are much more ornately colored and patterned than the Dumerils. So it's all just evolution. The ones that could hide the best lived to breed.
Yeah.
The ones that stood out didn't.
And it's funny with Madagascar, because it's my understanding as far as in the hobby, in America, the Westerns make up the bulk of what we have here.
Yes.
But if you go to like Europe, Easterns make up the bulk of what they have there. And I was like,
Yep.
we really got to swap. Like we've got to get
Can't do it.
I know.
You can't, because their CITES protected, so you can't even legally ship a shed skin of one across an international border. What happened, and this is just pure theory on my part, is that most, unfortunately, the ones when they changed the CITES protection status on these, I believe it was back in the late 70s, the animals that were grandfathered into the US at the time, the bulk of those aged out, having never been bred because people couldn't figure them out, which is just it's a bummer. It
Yeah.
really
I was
is.
going to say, that's very disappointing.
And
especially if you're spending all those years to try to get through a project.
Well, and they are not automatic. The last 3 years I have just sucked. Honestly, I've had crappy results, and honestly, I was just thinking about it.
Bill, let me stop you.
Yeah,
you can say shitty.
He's been so good and so wonderful.
You went to say it and you went away. I'm like, no.
And you stopped yourself.
Feel free.
It's so wonderful. I don't wear anything that says Reptile Gumbo podcast on it to school or anywhere in public that I might run into a kid because I don't want them to know this is out there.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
but I teach 10-year-olds, so that's why.
I'm at the tail end of my career and I travel a lot for work. And I had better results with them when I was gone a lot than the last 3 years when I've been traveling less and been home more. And I think I've gotten a little too OCD with them and I got slugs or I didn't get anything.
I was going to ask you that. Do you think it's because you're more hands-on now than you were?
I've heard some species just do better with neglect.
Well, I like
not neglect,
not neglect,
care.
like you forget.
But
yeah. I know what you mean.
My modus operandi is benign neglect.
Yes, that would be a very good way to put it.
That has worked for me in the past, but I think I've moved more towards too much overseeing and overthinking, and cycling Sanzinia to breed is a pain in the ass. There you go. I finally cussed.
Give it time.
You have to get them cold. You have to get them cold into the 50s for a prolonged and static period of time.
So yeah.
And this winter that we just had in Vegas, actually the last 2 winters, it's just been bipolar. That get them down into the 50s, but they always have access to that basking panel I mentioned earlier. But I adjust that in the wintertime. But really, what you're trying to attain is prolonged, longer, cooler nights, getting colder and colder, with shorter days that warm up at a lower rate. Yeah. That's always been my formula. And year before this, they were starting to breed in October. And just because Sanzinia lockup means nothing, they are some of the horniest snakes on the planet. You put them together.
That's so funny.
They're going to bang. It means nothing. And this winter, I don't think in Vegas we had more than 10 or 12 days where it was consecutively, they were sitting in the low 50s. I have them in unheated. I have them in an unheated building. So their cycling is dependent upon Mother Nature. I don't have any HVAC in that building. All the other stuff that I'm not breeding or that don't need to get as cold are in the main building. So I just move it's a big migration every year. I move all the cages into the other building. And, I think I have 1 gravid Western now out of 3 females. And I have 3 Eastern females. 2 I'm pretty sure didn't take, and 1, every time I put a male in with her, she just ran and hid. Well, ran for a lack of a better term, but they're absolutely non-receptive to the males whatsoever. And one of these days she's going to pop for me, because the only thing about Eastern Sanzinia also is the sad thing about them is the females will never be as pretty as they were when they were virgins.
Yeah, they get dark.
Super dark and black when they're gravid, and they never recover that virginal beauty that they had before they got tainted by a male.
Hilarious.
I mean, they're still
So
gorgeous.
some are like just screw the world. Life is not what it seems.
Is if someone goes to sell you a breeder female and she's bright, pretty green, you know they're full of shit.
Yeah.
I would say it's not a proven breeder. Yeah, I mean they're still fantastic, but they just never regain that vibrance that they had before they were bred the first time. And what's interesting also is that the Western babies are much prettier as babies than are the Easterns.
Yeah.
I mean, what I've been trying to do is breed Westerns that will retain more of their youthful coloration because they tend to fade away to kind of a gopher snake kind of brown when they're adults. Muted yellows, very little black. But when they're born, they're neon yellow, inky black.
They have reds, those rust color reds on them too.
Yeah. And they lose it all as adults. So I was holding animals back, but I'm 65. So I've decided that I'm aging out of holding animals back. That it's just not really realistic for me now to hold animals back that aren't going to be sexually mature for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. Long-term projects aren't a thing anymore.
No, exactly. So it's just the realities of life, like the California mountain king snakes and things like this, they reach maturity at a much more rapid rate. And I've just been in love with them since I was like 12 years old. So kind of like your rubber boas.
Yeah.
The reason I keep Zanata is I've just had a lifelong love affair with them. And they're not the most common of snakes. I think a lot more people have pyros than Zanata, which I don't get because Zanata are just so easy to start on pinkies. It's just amazing. and everyone likes gray bands and pyros, and I love them. But I just don't have the temperament to have to dick around with a bunch of snakes that want to eat lizards as babies.
That just seems like way too much complication.
Oh yeah, I couldn't do that. And one thing I can't do, I think some of those snakes are really pretty. I've had some king snakes in the past, and I own a couple now, but I own like a speckled king, and I say I own, it's yours. But
I have a Mexican black king.
Mexican black king.
He's just a wonderful husband, and he takes care of my snakes for me.
But I can't do kings just because I'm not a locale person. It's definitely.
Oh yeah, she's strictly a pet.
And I don't want to say it's just an older herper thing, but it's a lot of an older herper thing. Where locales were much bigger, especially gray bands. People go insane over locales.
They do. Yeah, it's a big deal.
And I don't have the patience because I like rosy boas. But I can't get deep into rosy boas because they're kind of like the king snake people of the boa world. They get really into locale stuff. And I'm like, I just like if it looks cool. I get it if it looks cool. But that's what I do like about the hobby is like there's something for everyone in there.
Exactly. And I'm not a lizard guy. I had some tree monitors for a while because they were arboreal, the black tree monitors. But lizards have too high a metabolism rate to suit my lifestyle because I'm usually gone. Me too. I'm gone on the road 3 to 4 nights a week, every week. So again, they're in, it's not fair to the animal to have that benign neglect level of keeping that my snakes demand of me to bring in something that requires a lot more hands-on attention.
Well, see, that's the thing especially with the monitors is the monitors, they require a relationship. Really, if you want to keep them as a good pet, right? You got to spend time with them. You can not hang out with your snake for 2 weeks and then still go get your snake out of there, and it'll be the same it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, my classroom animals are used to 100% of the attention all the time. Like my corn snake, I have 8 class pets in my 4th grade English classroom. Don't even teach science, but my corn snake shed the other day, and she pooped in her shed.
Yeah,
I noticed it. I just haven't gotten in there to take it out yet.
That's the best to clean it out.
I mean, yeah, it's already contained. I don't have to worry about it. But one of my kids was freaking out this morning. Her caretaker this week, because they rotate jobs.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, what is going on? And he was like, there is something in her shed, and I've never seen this before, and I don't know what's happening, and we need to take her out, and we need to make sure she is safe. And I'm like, you need to breathe, because she pooped in her shed and it's totally fine. I'm gonna let it like dry up a little bit before I clean it up. It's gonna be fine, man. Just take a breath. And then he
I think
like
it's cool
totally
that you
chilled, but
it's cool that you're exposing the kids to
Oh my
these
gosh.
animals at a young age, because there's this innate fear of snakes that's just silly.
yeah,
Yes.
well,
And
we've
that's
got a
what
corn snake.
rubber boas are great intro snakes for little kids.
Yeah. Yeah,
because
we have a,
they're not going to bite.
Oh,
You just
yeah.
know it.
Oh yeah, we have a corn snake. She does have a lock on her cage, not because I'm concerned for her as much as I don't want a 10-year-old to try
So
to
don't
be
trust kids.
stupid. Because I do have I have one kid who I also have a guinea pig, and he decided on his first day of school, which also happened to be a day that I was out sick, that he was going to stick his fingers in the cage and see what happened, and she bit him.
Yeah.
And everyone else in the class like went off on him. Like they're still not a fan of him because he made bad choices.
I'm
And
surprised
they
you're
were
not
like,
getting I'm surprised you're not getting sued.
yeah, well, I called my principal immediately and I was like, so this happened. And he goes, why wasn't he following the procedures that you have posted next to your animal? Because I have procedures on how to handle every animal next to them. And I'm like, that's an excellent question. I'm just telling you, it was his first day. This is what happened. And I wasn't there because the sub was in my room. And he was like, don't worry about it. I've got you. I was like, okay,
Well,
thanks.
If you're a 10-year-old like I was, and you put a sign up there that says "Don't do it," it's pretty much just an invitation for me to try.
Yeah.
It just depends on how you're wired.
And we've got
no trust.
lizards and all kinds of fun stuff. A box turtle. She's fun.
So,
yeah.
what would you like me to expound on, if anything?
So let's talk about first off, what is between the two, if we're going back to Madagascan tree boas, do you have a favorite, or the things are they that different? Because to the general person, they look at them, it's just the color, and is it just the color, or is there a difference in care?
No, I like them both the same.
Gotcha.
I like if you were to monetize it, the greens are worth, Easterns are worth with double the Westerns are.
I know it's killing me because that's what the one I like.
Yeah, everyone, but now 15 years ago, no one wanted the Easterns, everyone wanted the Westerns. Maybe 20 years ago now, it was the inverse.
Yeah.
At the time. And I think again with Facebook and Instagram and those kind of things, you post pictures, you create awareness, and awareness then creates interest, and interest then creates its own demand, and that's kind of what happened with Sanzinia, is that a lot of people just weren't aware of them, and you're right. I mean, they have a unique look. They look like a viper with the labial pits so prominent in their face. By and large, most of them have very gentle demeanors.
Yeah.
I got a couple of nasty ones out there that I don't trust implicitly, but the thing with them, and again, going back to that benign neglect philosophy, is they've become attenuated to when the cage door opens, I'm being fed. So you open up the cage door, they are on high alert. So you have to give them a little tap on the head or spritz them to break them out because they're ready to eat.
Yeah.
So, but most of them, by and large, they're very, very nippy as babies because they're in flight or fight mode. They just strike like crazy. But after about a year old, most of them tend to become very, very calm snakes. Really great pets.
It's kind of like with my Samboas, right? I never reach in and just grab a Samboa, because if you do, you're gonna get bit. Like that's their first thing. If something goes past their head, they reach up. But once you tap them, they're like, "Oh, there's no food." Right. You can pick them up, and they're fine. But they're just like these little spring coils, just waiting to strike at whatever goes by, and you kind of have to turn that off. Hey, calm down, and then you're good.
Well, it's the same thing with my ground boas. I mean, my female is about 8 feet long, and I have to make real sure that she knows that I'm dragging her out to clean the cage, because when they're an ambush predator like that, anything that brushes by them, they're going to take a stab at.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I have them you got an 8-foot snake. I have about 8 inches of orchid bark in that cage, and you can't see her. all you can see is the tip of her head sticking out of the bark. And she'll sit there for 2 weeks and not move an inch. She's big enough. I could probably feed her rabbits, but I just stick with the triple XL rats.
That's another one that is on my list of one that would be cool to eat. I've got a doom rolls, and I've always loved doom rolls. To me, it's just one of the prettiest colored.
Oh, people have done some
snakes.
amazing things with them. I mean, there's some people in the States, some of the work they've done with doom rolls, they have such big litters compared to ground boas that you hold animals back and try to hone in on desired traits. There's a girl named Ashley Andre, I think that's how she pronounces her last name, in some of the groups I'm in. And I mean, some of her animals are just fantastic. A good friend of mine, Paul Mitzelfelt, who is a really, really smart snake man, really savvy. He's one of my Sanzinia buddies, but he does the doom rolls too, and ground boas as well. And he's my go-to guy, and a guy named Doug Taylor as well. Comparing notes, and a lot of the stuff, we take pictures and post pictures of our successes, and we kind of put our failures in a shoebox and try not to, because we all have the setbacks. And fortunately with Sanzinia, they are very forgiving as far as keeper mistakes. They really don't, aside from baking them to death or putting them in a freezer, they're pretty tolerant of keeper mistakes. They really are. They're very hardy animals.
Yeah.
And they live a long time.
Madagascar is a weird place when it comes to animals. Just because the way that they come here, they don't come here. The way importation on some things open, you can always tell when Madagascar is open for importation because you see lots of giant hognose for sale at reptile shows. Yeah. But then like the boas, especially if you can't do them.
You won't. And it's the whole, I mean, Sanzinia are called or referred to as the trash can snake on Madagascar. The running joke being, if you go there, if you were to turn over 4 or 5 trash cans, you'd probably find at least 2. The judgment call was made with the destruction of the rainforest and the ridiculous growth of these palm oil plantations.
Yeah.
It was assumed that this was deleterious to Sanzinia's survival in the wild, when in actuality, they have benefited from the palm oil plantations. They're thriving. They're everywhere. They're not threatened at all. Oh, I shouldn't say at all. Everything on the planet is threatened, but not to merit that CITES restriction that they have.
Well, and Madagascar is so weird. I mean, they've lost over 50% of their rainforest. I mean, that whole island is being stripped away, huge chunks at a time. But there are always just certain animals that, especially the animals that aren't. My brain's going blank. Ones that eat only one thing. It'll come to later. But they do well because they can pretty much eat anything. They're not
generalists. They're a generalist.
Yeah, generalists.
They'll eat anything. I know guys that feed them. I haven't done it, but guys will feed them thawed out chicken drumsticks, raw chicken drumsticks. And
they're not an arboreal. They are, but they're not, right? So they're not like, oh no, the trees are gone, we're gonna die.
Yeah,
they can go anywhere. They're a big-bodied snake, and there's really a very small amount of predators on Madagascar. So
I think probably, I would assume feral cats and dogs would be an issue, like they are everywhere.
Yeah.
People talk about the invasive Burmese python in Florida. I still adhere to the point that they still don't kill as many native fauna as feral cats do.
Oh, I'm a huge proponent of getting rid of cats, but you start saying that to people and they call you crazy.
Yep. Just follow Australia's model.
Well, I'm like, I don't want to torture them. I just want to kill them. It's not, I just want them to die. Like I hate with a passion those programs that catch cats, fix them, and then release them. I'm like, you did the hard part, damn it. Don't put it back out there. You caught it.
It's still going to kill 50 animals a day or whatever they do just for the fun.
For fun. Yeah.
But we can go down that wormhole ad nauseum. Yeah.
But yeah, it sucks that you can't get them away. And when going to you have the ground boas, you know, you don't see them as much in the hobby, but I'm willing to bet if you could DNA test Dumerals boas, a large chunk of them in the hobby would have ground boa DNA.
Oh, there's
them.
no doubt. The reverse trio I have, I'm pretty certain that they're they're crosses. Yeah. They manifest the orange head, the orange neck, and all the scalation on their head matches the Madagascan ground boa. But if you look at the lateral pattern, and it's just, I would never market them or present them as one or the other because I just don't know. And because I'm uncertain, I can't be certain.
Yeah.
So,
well, because everybody, you know, they came in and people would call, because look, if you don't know and you're the general public, they do look similar. Between a ground boa and a Dumerals. But like, if you know the difference, obviously they look different, but close enough. And then also they didn't come in with such regularity that you had a ton of these and a ton of those. So if someone had a Dumerals and someone had a ground boa, they're like, oh, well, I need to make babies. Throw them together.
Yeah. And even then, I mean, the only other thing is litter size. You know, Dumerals, and it's really kind of a fascinating thing as far as evolution, where the Dumerals evolved to have a big litter of a bunch of small babies, and you hope that 2 or 3 make it. Whereas the ground boas might have 4, but they're huge babies. So do they have an advantage because they're born bigger? But there's fewer of them. So the reverse trio I have, when they have produced, I never got more than 3 babies, and they were huge.
Yeah.
So it's like, what the hell?
Well, it's like the pine snake.
I have Louisiana pines. I've never bred them, but I have a buddy who has, where I'm from. Louisiana pines only lay 3-4 eggs at a time, but the babies come out massive. Unlike a lot of the other pine snake species, which will lay a lot of, or like corn snakes or kings, which will lay a lot of eggs. And so that's one problem that's hurt them is very few eggs and then habitat destruction. Like those two things, you can't have them happen at the same time, or else they can't overcome that. And that's been the problem for Louisiana pines. But yeah,
I would think that probably at some point you have to worry about inbreeding, right, in the captive populations.
Yeah.
I don't think there are a whole lot of Louisiana pines out there, are there?
There's not. There's not a lot of folks breeding them. And my friend that I got mine from is one of the best. But like a lot of his stuff was collected when it was still legal to collect them, and he still has lines from all those, and he's in Louisiana where they were and all. But yeah, there's not a lot of people. And then the other problem with breeding them is legalities, like because they are protected now. So like if you breed them, you have to have a permit to sell. Yeah, you can't ship them, and if you want to sell them to anybody, you got to have a permit. If you want to sell them outside of something, they have to have a permit. It's just it becomes a pain in the butt.
Well, the other thing I forgot to mention that I keep I'm surprised I have a nice group of Baja rat snakes, and they are just about the coolest snake in my building. They are so cool, and again, sparsely populated in U.S. hobbies. And
it's funny how sparsely things are U.S. species are in the U.S. hobby.
Yeah, and you know they're protected in the state of California, which eliminates just a shit ton of keepers from legally having them, because one was found dead on Interstate 8 on the Mexican border like 20 years ago, 30 years ago now. And then I guess one was recently also found like down around Campo, California, which is really close to the Mexican border. So I guess in practical theory, they do reside in California. Yeah. But I know a lot of smart field guys who have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours trying to find one in California. But there could be 50 in a square mile, and if you're not there at the right time, at the right place, at that right moment, you'd never see one. So, you know, because of that, they're just not that many in the hobby, and they're probably the easiest snake in the world. They're one of the few species that I cohabitate year round.
We'll definitely get to that in a little bit too, because
I keep them I don't give them any heat. They're on the ground floor of my snake building.
That's how I do my rubbers.
They get to the whatever, maybe the high 70s during the summer, or
Yeah.
maybe 80, 81. And in the wintertime, they might get down to like the high 60s, but I don't have any heat. And I get 8 to 9 eggs every year, like clockwork. And
That's awesome.
you literally can't make a Baja rat snake bite or crap on you. They won't do it.
That's so much better
Sold.
than our
Let's go.
Texas rat snakes, because they
Let's
will 100% do
go.
both of them.
Yeah, they're fantastic. They're just fantastic.
So there's a couple questions over here in the chat. Jeff asks, do you notice a difference between the humidity requirements for Easterns and Westerns?
No. I don't spray mine, and obviously in Vegas, we have like no humidity, no ambient humidity in the desert.
God, what's that like?
Yeah.
Yeah, we live in Houston.
I live in Houston. There's humidity every day.
I went to college in high school, graduated high school, went to college in Oklahoma. So it's not a whole, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
My mini splits, the mini split HVA system I have out there pumps in a lot of humidity. So my building ambient most of the time is about 56%, which is adequate. Sanzinia don't like to be sprayed. Pisses them off. I just have a big enough water bowl in there for them to soak if they want to. And they soak a lot. Never had any problem with them shedding. They drink from water bowls just fine. They're not an emerald tree boa. They're not a chondro. They're more terrestrial than arboreal, and they're used to drinking out of water bowls. No problem.
As far as a quote unquote tree boa goes, they are fairly bulletproof compared to the rest of.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the babies are kind of funny because they're born, they shed within 2 minutes of being born.
Oh, really?
Or they're born, or they're shedding as they're being born, and they're super, super defensive, and they'll just sit there with their mouth open, gaping, kind of like baby bearded dragons do, and they'll strike without even trying to close their mouth. They just do this, and getting them started. It's much easier to start them on live hoppers than it is trying to tongue feed them a heated pinky or fuzzy. It's not big enough. They're not big enough. They don't have a big enough heat signature. And if they, what I call ball python, if they tuck their head and hide, you're done for that feeding session. Just
gotcha.
Go back.
Just cut your losses.
Try again tomorrow night, because at that point, all you're doing is stressing them. So I've had the best success with a tight, snug hide on the ground. And at nighttime, right when the lights go out, tossing in a small hopper with its eyes just barely open that will walk around and be mobile. And they'll 9 out of 10 times that's their first meal.
So are they more like all of your other boas, where you can feed them a slightly larger meal and not have to worry about causing damage to them?
Yeah, but again, in that benign neglect type theory, my philosophy is snakes did not evolve to be constantly digesting food.
Yes.
In the wild, it is a very random act. And I think you guys are probably too young, but back in the day, Pennzoil, the motor oil company, ran a commercial where they had like 3 engines up on blocks that were running, and they drained the oil out of all 3. And the last one to seize up was the Pennzoil engine.
Yeah.
All right.
So
so I kind of equate that to snakes. If we are, all of a sudden you get a snake and someone says you need to feed it every 7 days. Who says? Why did that become dogma that your rosy boa must eat every 7 to 10 days?
Well, because pet stores needed to sell rodents.
I need to eat every 2 to 3 hours. Is that going to work?
Right.
Will that work for me?
Sure.
No.
If they missed you enough, you'll shed in a full shed.
That was the whole thing. You bought your snakes at pet stores, and pet stores didn't make money off the snake. They make money off you feeding the snake, and that became eating it all the time. And we've talked in here before, the science behind when snakes eat. It's been shown. The insane thing about the anatomy of a snake when they eat is they physically, morphologically, they change. Yes. Their organs increase. Their heart gets bigger. Everything gets bigger to digest that meal.
It's a great paper.
Yeah, and then everything shrinks back down like it's supposed to and goes back into a resting state.
it's like I mean, they expend an enormous amount of energy in the digestion process. I had a dear friend of mine, Rick Staub, may he rest in peace. He just passed away a few months back. A brilliant, brilliant man and a wonderful human being. But we were herping one time and we were walking along, and he said, we put all this thought into how the temperatures we keep our animals, what temperatures we need to have to cycle them properly to breed. He goes, but do we ever give much thought as to what temperatures they need to digest? And it just blew the roof off my head. I'm like, oh man, you just ruined my whole day. Now I'll be, I'm ADHD to the core until I get OCD about something in my building. And then it's like, shit, there's only so many.
The ADHD switches over to OCD at that point and you hyperfixate.
Yeah. For about, 3 minutes, and then I'm back to chasing squirrels again. But like today, so I have one of these imported Ruschenbergeri. It's a smaller male. He only eats live. Yep. And so I fed him today, and I looked at his little feeding cart. He hadn't eaten since the end of March. Yeah, and he's just fine. He's just fine. And I've learned with them, because I have some Costa Rican ones too, that the males are routinely just fast. They may go 4 or 5 weeks. I still offer them, but if I don't sweat it if they don't eat.
Well, that's where it comes down to knowing your animals, right?
You have a couple that do that though.
Well, I've got male Sambos love to go off feeding when they are, I think, only one thing.
Yeah.
But you've got boas, and then you've got king snakes, and feeding wise, those are two totally different, just because their bodies are totally different, right? Yep. We talk about you don't need to feed your snake every 7 days, but if you have like king snakes, corn snakes, some of these faster, you can't.
Metabolism animals, yeah,
they're gonna have to, especially since we're keeping them in a cage with a constant heat source. It's not like in the wild where there will be, some people cool their animals down, but not everybody, especially a lot of people that keep like one corn snake, one king snake. They've got their heat lamp, their heat pad, whatever on one side. There's always heat. So they don't really slow all the way down. And so you kind of have to feed them a little more. But you got to know that. You don't have to feed them every other day, but you feed them a little more than I would say my big boas. I can feed my females once a month and they're good, or once every month and a half.
Yeah. And it's like when you're getting a litter started of boas or colubrids, the baby's metabolism rate's going to be a lot higher than once they start reaching maturity. I mean, like I said, those Madagascan ground boas, I probably feed them every 2.5 months, maybe even 3 months. They get a triple XL rat, and would they eat more? Hell yeah, they would. But
I've seen obese doomerals, but it doesn't mean I need to feed them that often.
So, and this is just a hypothesis of mine. But I really do think that going back to that overfeeding and constantly digesting food, I think everyone, myself included, for whatever reason, has walked out there and there's a snake laying there dead that you had for years, and there were no outward signs of anything wrong. All that notwithstanding, I think that process of constantly digesting food, like that Pennzoil commercial with the engine, something inside just quits. Whether it be the lower intestine, the upper intestine, I don't know snake anatomy well enough to opine, but for lack of a better word, I just think something inside that animal just said no mas.
Yeah.
And we feed them to death.
Well, especially when you look at some of these snakes, like the boas, with their heart getting so big to digest a meal. If you feed that boa every 7 days and never hits that resting period, its heart never slows back down and it gets smaller, and that heart is working overtime.
Right. And they're not having to forage. No, an ambush predator isn't going to expend any calories. But if you're a guy that was into coach whips or whip snakes, they are active foragers, or the tiger rat snakes, the spilotes. I mean, they are actively hunting all the time. So you would, of course, have to feed them more because they've evolved to be digesting more often.
Well, let's even go boa constrictors. I mean, right? Look, boas in captivity are a fat snake. They get fat easily because let's face it, they coil up on one side of the cage and they sit there, and then you feed them and they go back and coil up on that one side of the cage, and a boa can get really big. Same thing for Burmese pythons, stuff like that. Whenever you watch the nature documentaries and they go to South America and they find some sort of red tail in the wild, it's not fat. Like they are muscular. They have to go over logs and move distant. They may be an ambush predator, but they don't always. They still got to move around some. And that muscle, it works out completely different muscles than your snake that is sitting inside that 4x2x2 cage.
They got to go from point A to point B. If they're a nocturnal predator, they're going to find a place to hide during the day.
Yeah.
And then as morning comes, they're finding a place to camp out, during the day, or the inverse, depending on the species. So we're not asking them to expend any calories in captivity. And the other thing I think also is, if we're really, really honest, most snakes at their core are kind of boring. They don't do a whole lot.
That's what they do.
But I mean, so it's like the only real event is feeding time. I think if you want to perpetuate that event, you feed too much.
Yes.
And you're asking about Sanzinia. They'll eat. I've never had one regurge anything ever, but I don't give a 3-year-old animal an adult rat. I try to if it leaves a pretty good sized lump to a big lump, that's plenty.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing with like emeralds and green trees. It's a lot of times like if it regurges, oh god, it's gonna die, right? And that's just not gonna happen with Madagascan tree boas. They are more thick boa type boa.
But if you're feeding it correctly, do you have to worry about regurge? Like if you're not trying to overfeed it?
Well, some of the other arboreal species are sensitive.
Oh.
Yeah. I haven't ever. I always have what I consider to be the appropriate size frozen rodents on hand,
Yeah.
And just as they get bigger, but like my adults now, the Westerns get quite a bit bigger than the Easterns. I can see the question on the thing.
No, we'll get to it in a second. Go ahead.
Yeah. The Westerns can get well over 6 feet long and about that big around. I mean, they can handle a large rat, no problem. But most my adults, I give them big, medium rats. Maybe before they go into cycling, I'll give the females the next step up size rat, like at the end of September, before I start dropping tents, just to give them a little bump. But I've never had one. I mean, here's the question: is the cool temps? To get them to breed successfully, in my opinion, they need to get into the low 50s for at least a good 60 days. I regulate my lights, my day cycle. The lights on a timer gets shorter and shorter and shorter as the temperatures descend, where they're having like a 15-hour night and just a brief daylight. And I let that heat panel, the basking shelf under the heat panel, it continues to drop to where they're sitting at like 52 at night, and they might get to 68 for 4 hours during the day if they want it. And 9 out of 10 times, they don't even try to look for the heat. I've had them copulating in the water bowl at 52 degrees.
Well,
and I've never had one have no respiratory issues whatsoever.
Well, and one thing it might do is it might extend their life some going through those cooler periods. Like the rubber boas, I think there's one that was recorded at like over 50 years old. But that's a snake that spends a big chunk of its life literally doing nothing. There's a whole chunk of the year where it's curled up, it's cold, its body is not trying to digest anything. It's not, and so there's less wear and tear on its body. So it might be less wear and tear on a snake if you give it that cooling. But
it's like the European adders, their breeding cycle and their life cycle activity wise is like 90 days.
Yeah.
I've seen rubber boas on the snow.
Oh, mine. I keep mine during the winter. I keep them in a cooler, in a wine cooler. I've had ice on the box that they're in, and they're still cruising around
like it's nothing. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
The question is, do they require cool temps if you're not breeding? No, they don't. I mean,
it's good to know.
They are. My building right now is. I try to keep it around 83. and I don't have any heat on them at all. And they're fine. They don't need, you know, I've had spikes where they can get up to 86. Again, they're fine. They're one of the more bulletproof species to work with. They really are.
Which is why I would love to see them in the hobby more. I think that it's an amazing snake. It looks amazing, and it fits, because it's nice to have more snakes in the hobby that are quote unquote bulletproof.
They're user friendly for sure.
Yeah.
And that are friendly. That's important.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. Not for everyone, it's important, but for our household, it's preferred. Not that I do much with the snakes, but
they're not, you know, if they bite, you know it, and they'll always be biters. And if they're not, you know it, and they, you know, I have some that would never bite me, and I have two in particular that I know they got crappy attitudes. They're shitty, and they're gonna. If I give them an opportunity, they'll bite me. And I got bit a couple weeks ago by an adult female, just because I didn't do what I said to you earlier, is let her know that it wasn't feeding time. I was just reaching for the water bowl.
Don't you have a label on a couple of cages a couple of boxes in the rack?
No.
You did at one point because you were out of town and I had to go water things.
No, but
I had to take care of snakes while he was out of town. So he stuck labels and was like, this one will come at you. This one, like
now it's a fun guessing game.
Guessing game. Yay.
If you find the jungle carpet in there, it will try and kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, it's so one thing, you've been in the hobby a long time. You've seen the changes in the hobby, especially we talk king snakes, right? If going back to when you got into the hobby, colubrids were the thing, right? That was, everyone did colubrids. Ball pythons were not the thing. They were not a thing at that point, other than they were that snake that we get in and it dies. What is probably the biggest change you've seen in the hobby, and what is probably the biggest change you would like to see now in the hobby?
Man, those are two giant questions. It's kind of hard. It's kind of like comparing apples to oranges. Because I mean, I'm an old guy. I bred Burmese pythons like in 1977.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And when I was growing up in Southern California, there was an importer called Western Zoological Supply.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to sell them feeder lizards. We'd go on our bicycles and noose lizards and bring them to them, and they would give us store credit. And
that's awesome.
That's how I got like my first Burmese pythons. I don't know how many lizards it ended up costing me, but you know, we could just go in there and hang out with these guys in their import shop all day. And you know, there was no social media. I went to the Western Zoological Society HERT meetings once a month, and they had kind of a buy and sell trade. I mean, I was so naive. I had collected a California Mountain King, and I was so proud of myself. And looking back, this older guy, you know, I was in junior high, and this guy was probably in his 20s, traded me a wild caught 8-foot reticulated python for this California Mountain King. And this thing was just pure. And I was unprepared, unqualified to keep an animal like this.
Shame on him for taking advantage of you.
Absolutely.
Shame on him.
I just figured, you know, but you know, I was very fortunate. But you really can't. I'm not involved. The only circles I run in really are around the animals that I keep.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't keep ball pythons. So I've been to the herb shows, and I'm seeing the, you know, amazing display of you know, the colors, the patterns, and I don't understand how they come up with the names they come up with. But be it as it may, and the same thing with boas, all the different IMG and blah, you know, the hashtag. I call them the hashtag snakes because every time someone posts a picture, there's like 50 hashtags underneath the animal. I guess I'm just more of a purist. I've always been drawn towards the things that had a reputation of being difficult to breed in captivity. So, by gosh, I'm going to try.
Yeah.
Try to figure them out. And I've had as many failures as I've had successes. And I don't I'm never hesitant. I'll always share what I know, but all I know is what I've experienced myself. But I'm never too proud to ask someone else for advice or help. And
That's
there are some
very, very
there's some
important.
guys in the Tanzania that are, it's a small group of people, but it's a really good group of people that, we've done breeding loans together. We've done a lot of things, or this is what I'm doing different this year, and at least even if you discount or discard the opinion, at least it's offered for you to digest. Whether you want to use it or not is up to you, kind of thing. So there's a lot more segments to the hobby than there was when I was a kid coming up. That's for damn sure. With heck, it's hard to even compare now to the crazy times of the COVID era when
Yeah.
prices went through the roof, and it was buy, and of course now the market corrected itself. Evidently, I've never been in this thing to make any money, and I've always said that if I have so many animals that I open up a cage and go to myself, oh crap, I forgot about you. I have too many animals. So like I said, being 65, I've got my core groups of species I want to work with that, even if I have to gift them away, I'm happy with that too. I've gifted
Well,
some of the Ruschenbergs away from that litter I got, because it's kind of like a karma deal. I'd rather gift a pair of animals or an animal to someone when there's no money involved, because I know they're going to dig it and they're elated to have it. And at its purest form, it's a win-win situation.
yeah.
There's no onus on you being, hey, you ripped me off, it died, blah, blah, blah. You give a guy or someone a pair or an animal, whatever, and it's kind of a karma thing. You give it out and you hope you get it back.
It's definitely, there's huge changes. So I got in the hobby around 2003, so well after you, but around 2003, and the hobby then to the hobby now is drastically different. And like you said earlier, social media is a bit. My social media when I got into the hobby was King Snake, right? And
Yeah.
and I liked it in ways better because I feel people thought out stuff sometimes before they typed it and hit send more than they do on social media now. And I feel like there were probably more true conversations between people on the message boards on King Snake than there are on Facebook now. But social media does also allow us now to look, I'm able to follow you and see what you're doing, and you're on the other side of the country, and I can see what you're doing with your snakes, and you can find other people doing the same thing. Whereas before it was much harder to find someone, especially when you're doing something like Russianburger Eye, right? There's only a handful of people. I know you and Warren Booth. Those are the two names I know.
There's a couple other guys. Warren's got some really beautiful animals from Trinidad. He put a lot of hard work and effort into doing it. And I don't know all the particulars, but they did I don't think Trinidad allows the exportation of their fauna, but being who he is, and he did it all the right way, and they brought in a big group from Trinidad. Mine are from the mainland, Venezuela. So they're the same snake, but they're apples and oranges different. The one thing that the now 2 years experience I've had with them is how little we really know. The year 2024, that there is a giant population of animals that we know so little about. It's just amazing to me. I find it really exhilarating, actually.
Do you find the mainland ones, are they bigger? Like in normal, generally?
I don't know.
Gotcha.
I don't know enough. I've never asked Warren how big his are. I just don't know. I know that overall they are the largest of the Corrales family.
Yeah.
I have one female that is easily over 7 feet long.
Jeez.
And just a massive, more like a scrub python than you would think a boa, for sure. But it's just, you're talking just thousands and thousands of, or not that, hundreds and hundreds of square miles of habitat with overlaps and intergrade zones and all these things. No real geographical barriers between Ruschenberger Eye and Hortulanus. Are there Are there intergrade zones in between? Because the litter I got, there's so much variety. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
And
Is it like that every time or no?
I only have the one litter. I'm breeding some right now.
Gotcha.
I'll let you know.
And that's the one you got
Best of
in.
luck.
That's the one you got in that was already pregnant. So
Correct.
So you don't know if that is a litter. Is there variation because there's variation, or is there variation because what did it breed with? Is it variation? Like, what is the answer there? And it's hard to tell.
Oh, that's a lot of variables.
And I don't know. That's the honest answer. I just don't know. If you look at some of them, but I mean, the sample size is so small with Ruschenbergeri. The sample size with Hortulanus is immense.
Yeah.
And they're just cousins. I mean, they're just subspecies. So this litter raised a lot of eyebrows. Oh, they must be intergrades. I don't know. I'm not selling them, so it doesn't really matter. Short term, we'll see. They've already gone through huge octogenetic color changes and pattern changes. And every month, it looks like I have a brand new litter. They're changing so much, so fast. So I just decided, you know what? Pump the brakes, this whole thing. Let's wait and see what they look like when they're 3 years old.
So I want to ask about those and the Madagascan. Just, do either one of them have the typical tree boa teeth when we think, teeth that are going to tear you up?
Well, I'd call them the Corrales teeth.
Gotcha.
So
they've got emerald type teeth.
Yeah, the babies are now like 19 months old, 18 months old. I mean, they'll draw blood, no problem. I pull them out and they'll bite me 5 times.
Ugh.
They're evil little shits. They are. I got bit the other day by an adult Western Madagascan female, and she didn't really, she just tagged me and realized and let go, and she barely broke the skin.
Wow.
Now I'm sure she could have, but the Sanzinia don't have near the dentures that the Corrales family do, for sure.
So see, it's another thing where they're not a tree boa. They don't scare you when they yawn.
The teeth
they're not
aren't frightening.
No, yeah, there's no comparison. The dental array or the dental armory that Corrales have compared to Sanzinia is night and day.
When everyone ever looks at the skull of just an emerald, that is, outside of anything with fangs, that is the scariest snake skull I've ever seen. When you look at the size of what it is,
a mouthful of teeth, that every one of them is the size of a rattlesnake's front fangs.
Yeah. Imagine sizing that up to like Burmese python or anaconda sized skull. That'd be horrifying. The thing would just,
I would think that a full grown emerald or a full grown Ruschenbergs could easily cause some nerve damage if they bit you in the right place on your hand.
Oh yeah, I bet.
I think the penetration depth would be enough to where it would be more than just wiping off a outline of its face on your hand that's bleeding now.
Jeff in the chat had a question. We were talking earlier about, earlier in the hobby. Wonder if you had ever worked with Sri Lankan pythons.
No, they've been blacklisted since even I started. Right around. So I'm dating myself now. I started getting, when I was catching lizards for that Western Zoological Supply, that was like junior high. So like I graduated high school in 1977. And I think by then the Indians and the Sri Lankans had been censored, if you will, were no longer being brought in. But that's just.
And now it's everything. Can't have any of them.
And to this day, they're still some of my favorite looking snakes.
Yeah.
I mean, they are just, there's a guy here in Vegas who has some, I don't know him. I've just seen his post. And I'm like, how the heck did you get a hold of these?
Indians are pretty. I've never seen one in person, only pictures. It's another one where the general person will go, isn't that a Burmese? I'm like, oh man, no, you look at the two side by side. They are different.
They're very different. And I wish the thing is, you have animals like that and they're fantastic, but my goal is if I breed things and I'm successful in breeding them, means it's a summation of that everything else I've done has been done correct. To get an animal that's healthy enough and cycles and reproduces successfully, that means that everything else I've done up to that point has been good. Has been spot on. Not spot on,
Yeah.
but there's nothing spot on in nature, nothing static in nature. That's when, people talk about, stuck sheds on Amazons or on Corrales, and well, you have to keep the humidity at 79%. Again, that's kind of like that feeding frequency.
Yeah.
There's nothing static in Mother Nature. I mean, humidity doesn't stay 79% in the jungle. We have a house in Panama, off the coast of Panama. And I've done a lot of herping in Panama and Costa Rica. And if you're on the ground floor, it's one environment. If you climb 30, 40 feet up in a tree and you're in the breeze, in the canopy, it's a completely different ecosystem up there.
Well, and I've also heard just slightly hitting on shedding. The one thing that I think is under not thought about enough when it comes to shedding. Everyone wants to harp on humidity, but I think a lot of times it's just fresh water for them to drink. A well-hydrated snake is probably going to shed much better than a dehydrated snake, right? Because that moisture is coming from within. Like they're making moisture between the old skin and the new skin. And so
I've even heard of guys that subscribe to, injecting a feeder mouse with water.
Yeah.
To add some hydration to the
that wouldn't mess up their stomach.
It's just water.
I've never done it, but it doesn't sound like a bad idea. I don't think it would hurt anything. It would just add some hydration, as opposed to externally, would add the hydration internally. So I've got I'm sitting on 17 of those baby Ruschenbergs, and I'll have 16 that shed out perfectly, and have one that has a stuck shed. They're all in the same exact
container.
Same.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's no fun. It's no fun having to soak them and dick around with a snake.
Well, they seem so friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sure they appreciate it very much.
So I was,
again, and they're another snake that does not like to be sprayed. If you spray one of those, if they're up in the branches and you spray them, it's like you hit them with a cattle prod. They just fly off the branches onto the ground and go spastic.
Well, yeah, because all these things are probably hot when it's raining. They're not just sitting out in the open letting it hit them.
Yeah, so what I do with all of them now is I for my bedding, I just use these pads I buy off, these absorbent padding I buy off of Amazon. They're really good. They're made out of recycled organic fiber, and they're quite absorbent. So when I change out the padding, I just spray all the padding down.
how big did these pads come? Out of curiosity, would you say 2x2?
Yeah.
Is that what that cage is over there?
Yeah.
We are
they're
currently
perforated down the middle, so you can split them off.
Nice. See, we're currently using puppy pads on the bottom of my chameleon's cage. The problem
These
is
would be way more cost effective.
I have to change them out so frequently because his mister just soaks the bottom of that puppy pad.
Yeah, these hold a lot of water, so all of the Ruschenbergs have a canopy of netting, and then they have a hide on the bottom, and I'll spray everything but underneath the hide. So if they want to, they can go under there and get dry. But I don't have any humidity monitors in my room. Like I said, I know because of the mini split system I have, it tells me what the humidity in the building is, and it pretty much hovers around 58%. So if I spray their cages, again, I spray them once a week, I'm guessing it probably peaks way high right off the bat. Then it's going to dry out over the week, and then I'll raise it up again. Just kind of keep it, because the other thing is if you keep things constantly wet, you're just asking for bacteria. You're asking for fungus and mold.
The bottom of the pads get gross.
Yeah.
So
these don't. They're all,
James, I'm going to get you to ask. I'm going to get you to get the link from him later.
I'll send you the link.
That's awesome. We'll share it in the discussion group.
I used to use orchid bark when I had a bunch, but I ran out of it, and it's impossible to get in Vegas.
Yeah,
they just don't sell it. And try to buy a pallet of orchid bark and shipping would just be cost prohibitive for me.
Yeah, astronomical.
So
So in the
and go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say these make it real easy. You go out there, you see a turd, you see the urates. It may just be on one half of one of those pads. Well, there's perforated. You can just pull out the part that's soiled, put another one back in there, and you keep moving.
Oh, nice.
That's
Or
awesome.
Roll them up and throw them out. It works well for me. They work.
That's
well
I was going to say right now with the puppy pads, we change them out every couple days. And when I do change them out, like they'll dry out in between the mistings because he gets misted in the morning and then misted again in the evening.
What is this for?
My
Panther
chameleon. And he comes
Okay.
down to poop. So he doesn't do that, all the time. But it's just they're made to retain the moisture from puppies peeing on them.
Right.
So
we bred American bulldogs for a lot of years, so we're very familiar with puppy pads.
Yeah, I mean it works, and right now it's effective. But I would like to find something that absorbs a little better.
I want to go to
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I wanted to go to the chat for a couple things.
Isn't it busy tonight?
Jeff said we're talking about morphs, ball pythons, and boas. That Bill would be great playing the Is It a Morph? So I've played this game with people on here before where I go through Morph Market and I find a bunch of the ball python morph names that are for sale, and then I make up some names.
We're not doing that tonight. Don't panic.
But
I would lose.
I'm so bad at this game.
Most
bad.
the names make no sense. But I thought Jeff, maybe I'll talk Bill into coming back and do a short segment on our Patreon of the Is It a Morph game just for shits and giggles,
just for fun.
Some of those
I'm
names,
so bad.
some of those
Blue-eyed
names
Lucy or something like that. That's about all I know. Half of them honestly look like normals to me.
Oh, it's
me too.
100%. I just
I like bananas and I like pie.
I like pie.
They look
I can tell you if it's a pie.
Okay, so I'm so ignorant of that whole market segment that I didn't even know until last year that the babies lose all their colors as adults. When you see all these,
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that until last year.
Well, it's completely different than say some of the snakes you work with, right? So that color change from baby to adult and ball python, the best they're going to look is like 6 months. Like that.
I didn't know that.
They look great.
That's how he's talked me out of so many snakes.
All those pictures that ball python breeders post of their babies, and people are like, I want that. I'm like, yeah, it looks wonderful. And then it's going to fade when it gets as an adult.
Yeah, I found a xanthic that I fell in love with.
Yeah, and then
he was
fades.
like, let's look up the grown-up version of
But then you
this.
look at some of these arboreal snakes, which have these color changes, and they're drastic, but they still look cool at every stage. Every stage of the color change is awesome.
Yep, absolutely.
That was one of the things Jeff said in the chat that. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the Western Sanzinia are more along the lines of ball pythons in that regard. They're born, they look spectacular, and they're vibrant, and their colors just pop. But you have to know when they're adults, they're going to be some form of muted yellow and brown snake.
Well, and Jeff said he loves orange.
To date now, I sold a pair of high yellow, a pair or one, but a few years back to a really, really good breeder named Glenn Brooks in California. And he has since bred at least one of those animals and achieved more high yellow Western Sanzinia. So it is proving to be somewhat inheritable.
That's cool.
So that's kind of cool. Yeah.
Well, I saw it was like when we were in 2019 when we were in Tinley. Yeah, I think 19. Keith McPeak had a green Sanzinia had a ton of white on it, and it was probably the prettiest Sanzinia I had seen. Just had tons of white in between the green. I don't see it that often on them.
I have two high white. I've got a pair of 2-year-olds that I have. And then I have the one I was telling you about that ran from every male I put through her. Probably one of the best looking Sanzinia I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Spectacular. I'll send you a picture later.
Which means she'll be a pain in the ass to breed because
I ran 3 different males by her this last season. I waited till November this year, mixed it up, trying to get better results than pairing in October. I said, screw it, I'll keep them cold. I'll delay it till November, end of November, all the way through March. Every time I put a male in there, she was stressed out. I mean, they weren't even really actively even trying to bang her. They just, their presence freaked her out. And she's plenty old enough. She should be ready to go. But so I guess the Fortunately, unfortunately, she's still gorgeous.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But
you're really hoping that she'll get ugly at some point.
Yes. I mean, she needs to breed. And it's not from a lack of trying. Last year,
Gotta earn her keep.
I thought she was a little borderline, maybe a little small, a little young, but she's, I think, coming on about 6 now and has plenty of body weight. She should go, but I couldn't even palpate any follicles on her or anything. So I mean, hopefully she's just a late bloomer.
So talking about color, Jeff said the orange and gray Ruschenberger eye are amazing looking. Look, the picture you showed me of that one the other night. I always hear Warren talking about them, and I've never really taken the time to look them up. And then I saw the picture. I'm like, man, that is that mottled color that you could really see where if it's in a tree and the sunlight's coming through the tree, through the leaves and hitting, it would just kind of disappear in the leaves.
Yeah. I think the Trinidad ones that Warren has, or at least the pictures of the ones he shared, by and large, the Trinidad animals, I don't know as much about Tobago, but the Trinidad animals, by and large, are like patternless as adults. Like a steel bluish gunmetal gray kind of thing. He hasn't shared any pictures in a while.
That sounds pretty.
But the ones I have are all over the board. I've got 29 of them.
I mean, do you really count what you have at this point?
I don't put numbers on it.
You just tell people a lot.
The only reason I did that, there was a reason why, but normally I don't. No, but I'm at capacity with the time I have available to give them the level of care I think they deserve. Or I'm a closed shop now. I'm not.
Have we hit that point yet, James?
Nope. No, you're way younger.
Damn.
There's a lot going on. I'm not getting rid of stuff anytime.
It's 100% him. I do nothing. Let's just be 100% real here.
Well, I finally hit my stride of trying to work.
I'll feed lizards. I take care of the dogs.
Living in Vegas, though, with all my animals in the outbuilding, until I have a backup generator, which I don't have yet. That's my next goal. I live in fear of being away from home and we have a power outage.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the wintertime, you have a whole lot more time before it's fatal than July 31st, and it's 116 degrees outside.
Oh, yeah.
Those cook out there.
Yeah, and our youngest son still lives at home, and he's 24, and he's like our indentured servant. He's probably fished out more baby boas when I was away from home than most guys have ever seen. Bless his heart.
That's what I'm waiting. So I've got a litter of boas I'm waiting on now, but I did the math on another one that I think might be pregnant, and we did the math on when she would be due. We're on vacation. We're going to be in Tennessee.
Yeah, with your parents.
So like crap.
So I have Wi-Fi cameras always on the Gravit.
Yes.
Oh, James has started that, and it's kind of a lifesaver. It's not nearly as annoying now.
It's with motion sensors. So, but when he moves out, I don't have that fail-safe. I've got a good friend in town that could help me out. But summertime in Vegas and traveling, there's always a level of anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not so much the monetary value of what I have out back, but it's the personal equity of time.
I would say you've had some for a long time. It's
right.
Yeah.
And you're attached to these animals.
Yeah. I mean, just to have, I just don't trust the power grid anymore. It just seems so fragile. And, so my next investment will be a whole home backup generator. So,
yes.
At least, because I mean, it's not like, with a lot of those animals, you got to think about reaching in there and pulling them out in case of a power outage. You just can't stick your hand in there blindly.
Yes, you could. It just may not go well. So just looking at the chat here, we had Stygian Exotics. I put up there.
See that.
Permanent nerve damage from one of her emeralds biting her. We talked about that earlier. But just gnarly teeth on those things.
It's funny because having both, the emeralds are almost autistic compared to Ruschenbergs. I don't want to get in trouble, but their strikes are just so slow and lethargic compared to these Scud missiles. I mean, these Ruschenbergs are just,
which is
they're-
funny because in the hobby, emeralds have always been looked at. They will kill you, and you're like, no, wait till you meet their cousin. Their cousin
Yeah.
really will
That's
and enjoy
funny.
and it's just they're. I mean, just opening the cage, they're immediately aware of you.
That's so crazy.
And it's taken 2 years to where now they'll actually come to the front of the cage at night expecting to be fed. That's been it was like a huge step in their acclimation to captivity. But still, I mean, we're talking from 3 feet away, they'll hit you hard. They won't miss.
Damn.
Jeez. I'll pass. They're cool.
Damn.
I'm not doing a very good job of marketing them, are they? Am I?
They're great snakes, guys. They're pretty. They'll kill you, but they're pretty. But
I
they'll
mean,
destroy
William, we're talking about this. We're not talking about the Sanzanias right now, are we?
you. No, we don't.
Y'all are throwing out all kinds of names. I don't know. I'm
Sanzania, the Madagascar tree
Googling a
boas.
whole lot of stuff when we're done.
William said he'd trade his firstborn son left
Yeah.
nut and his right leg. I'm almost there with you, William. I'm still using some of those body parts, but
Well, at 65, I am too. So I'm not, and I have both intact and Sanzini, so I guess I'm good.
you're fine. You don't have to get rid of anything.
There you go. There you go.
The
Priorities.
whole conversation here I missed. Jesus Christ.
I was going to say the chat has been flying tonight, which is kind of awesome.
Jeff said if you considered a swamp cooler for the room, you could cool it off with battery power when the power goes out. Yeah, I don't know how much a swamp cooler is going to work out there in Vegas though in the summer.
Yeah, may not.
I mean, that's a good. We have one for like our back patio. It's a portable one, but and it would work if I had a small gas generator. Then the thing is, you have to make sure there's someone there to fill it up with water.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to make sure someone's
otherwise you have to connect it to a hose, which means you have to leave the door open.
Yeah,
which kind of defeats the purpose.
Well, I would think in a dire emergency that would be a great option for me.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Hercules in a second. Jeff was wondering if he's right thinking that Ruschenberger are a 10-foot snake. I think it's 7, but I think 10's kind of huge, and that's.
I think 10 would be. I don't think they attain those lengths. But then again, and that's why I have such a Jones for them, is we're just on the cusp of learning.
Yeah.
In 2024, we think we know it all. Again, I go back to that. The amount we don't know quadruples what we do know, if not more. And it's just kind of fun not knowing what the hell you got and what you're going to get. Not too many species left. Not too many species left to play with that you can say that about.
Well, and I like seeing it more and more people getting those odd and end snakes. So that's we've had emeralds, we've had Amazons, right? Those have been in the hobby for a while. It's cool to see some of these other ones come in. We had, my brain's went blank on her name, but we had someone on last year that does file snakes, right? You see file snakes come in on importer tables and they go home with somebody and they die. It's cool to see someone take them, make them work and breed them. And those become a part of the hobby now. Then that's one thing I think I've seen in the hobby. One change that I like that I think is happening in the hobby is we're starting to see more people move away from those 5 main, maybe not move away from, but get other species in their collections than just those like 5 main species that make up the bulk of what sells in the hobby. Yeah. And that's going to start to really change the hobby. You're going to get back to, because again, when you were in the hobby, the variety, when you started, the variety was much larger than it is now when you go to a show.
Well, but you had no access.
Yeah.
I mean, right. I mean, we're talking about, going out to Palm Springs to cruise roads, and none of us had a driver's license. So my brother would take us and we'd pitch in for gas. I mean, there weren't any herp shows to go to. There wasn't there was really no market.
Right.
I mean, I had access to that importer exporter outfit. So I had, an Anaconda in junior high. That was just.
Well, I guess that's what I mean. Those importers brought in a large variety of things, and the idea back then was not to try and breed them.
Guys had price lists that they would mail out.
Yeah,
We had somebody else on here talk about that before.
Oh yeah, the old price list. Yeah.
But I wasn't connected to those people, so I didn't even know about them at the time. I didn't. I think I really started jumping back into building up my collection with the advent of kingsnake.com and Fauna, those two
Yeah.
websites.
I think it was Tom Harbin that was telling us about the price lists.
Probably.
I think that's who it was.
Well, there were a lot of folks who did them. Jeff asked, have you thought about keeping the neotropical bird snakes? Those are really cool snakes.
I had them.
Did you?
I worked with, yeah. I had the Susties. Well, now they've changed again. I bred those, and then I did the Spilotes as well, the tiger rat snakes.
Yeah.
That's
The
about it.
neotropical bird snakes. Was it Jason Hood had some. I remember seeing them in Tinley, and that was the first time I saw a snake, and I was like, that can't be real.
So I have a question, because you've mentioned several species where you're like, oh yeah, I bred those. And that, like, is it just something that you're like, okay, I just wanted to do it to see if I could do it,
Yeah.
or there's not a market for it, or
It just, there's a lot
more
of
of
stuff
a personal curiosity?
You're accurate in that I would get into a species to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
And like I got big into mangrove snakes for a while, the boiga.
Yeah.
And I had the dendrodendros and the gemicincta and the melanota, those three subspecies, and bred them to F2 and got the babies feeding and stuff. And then different situations in life changed. We had kids growing up, and things like this, and life tends to get in the way sometimes. Or looking back, I don't know why I moved on to other things like I did, but I have regrets. Some of the stuff I wished I'd have kept, for sure. But yeah, I've always been drawn to the challenge of trying to breed stuff that has a reputation as being difficult to breed and captivate.
Difficult. That's really neat.
So what is the number one thing that you wish you would have kept and still had, and was maybe not breeding, or if we were breeding, but just still had at least?
Barneck scrubs.
There was no hesitation at all. None.
Yeah.
This has been something he has thought of.
Got to sit there for a while in the back of his head.
Yeah.
It's not feasible. They were over 12 feet long at the time when I got rid of them. I had a good clutch, and actually I did sell them to fund acquiring more Sanzinia. So it was a purpose-driven
that worked.
move. Yeah. And really, I mean, they were okay. It's a lot of snake, and they had a scrub temperament, but they weren't really bad once you got them out of the cage, as long as you just you didn't restrain them. You just kind of let them think they knew where they were going, and you directed them somewhere. They were fine.
Gotcha.
But if you tried to grab them, you had an 11-foot, like a garter snake, trying to kill you with its face and shitting all over your walls. And I'd rather get shit on. I'd rather get bit than get shit on. Because you get bit, you can wash your hands and go. One of those guys soils you, you got to go take a shower and burn your clothes.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
sometimes it's just ease of care too.
Oh,
My job traveling so much, some things just weren't consistent with my lifestyle. And my kids were young; they were playing sports and travel teams and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
My lifestyle, and now that I'm on the cusp of retirement, I really don't. A lot of guys are saying, "Dude, why don't you ramp up? You should be, going nuts." Now, every time I leave the house, I have to worry about the stuff I'm leaving behind.
Yep.
So there's always that apprehension of, especially when my youngest boy moves out, I have no indentured servant that I can call on to go check our stuff.
Right.
My stuff. My wife's not into the snakes. She supports me, but her philosophy is, I don't get it, but it's important to him, so I'm good with it.
So Jeff also mentioned the Haitian or Jamaican boas. Those are cool, and I'd like to see more in the hobby. But have you worked with any of those in the other island boas?
I have Jamaican boas.
Gotcha.
I have Jamaican boas. I didn't forgot to bring them up.
Those
I like
are cool.
They're very cool, and I have a trio, and they're not nearly as nasty as I was led to believe.
I have so much to Google when this is over.
Yeah.
I've only known like 4 species that we've mentioned.
Well, there's a lot
tonight.
of island boa species that are
I
really
didn't
neat.
realize that there were so many different species.
Yeah,
Like I
and
knew
the
there were
thing
a
is,
lot, but
kind of like the Dominican red mountain boas, which are, on the same island, basically. I'm not gung ho about breeding them because I know I'm going to have a lot of. I know that my strong suit is not dicking around with a bunch of tiny boas that want to eat lizards.
Yes.
That's not my strong suit.
I like my rodent eaters. It makes life easy.
So I'm honest about my own limitations. So it's kind of like you breed something like that, be careful what you ask for. Because, oh, great, I got 22 babies. Now you
Well,
got
it's like we had.
Go ahead.
Well, it's like we had Kristen on from Stygian Exotics a while back, and I've always wanted viper boas. I had one, it died on me, but I'm like, man, I really want viper boas. And then talking to her, I was like, okay, I don't want viper boas. She's like, yeah, they really need to be wet, and the babies don't want to eat rodents, and this. And I'm like,
I saw a day-old viper boa one time, and I saw how tiny that thing was. It was like
and realized it was not for you.
It was like a baby decay snake.
Jesus Christ!
And I just said no. But I mean, when you're talking about assist feeding a snake the front leg of a pinky mouse to get them started, I'm not wired that way. I wish I had that kind of patience and determination. I just don't.
I don't even think I wish I had that kind of patience. I don't. So she turned me off of it. It's been a lifelong. I'm like, I'm gonna get them, and then I realized, nope, they don't fit into my keeping style. So that's
I just I had the tree boas from there and Solomon Island tree boas for a while, and I'd like to get back into them. They were really cool. But again, my ultimate goal is I like to breed stuff as an indicator that everything else I'm doing properly if they're able to successfully reproduce. But I've never had to dick around with trying to get baby Solomon Island tree boas started.
And that's talking to Kristen because she does the Solomon Island tree boas, the ground boas, or she's done both of them. But I'm like, they're also super small, and we're talking about like the litter size on some of those can be outrageous.
Yeah, I had 21 babies from a ground boa, and I did a lot of lizard hunting for those, and it was amazing to me how big of a lizard those little shits could eat.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, and then I don't know, it was random, but after like the 6-month mark, maybe 6 to 9 months, one by one they switched over to rodents.
And life became easier.
It was brutal. So that I got out of those real quick.
So she's curious as to how successful you've been with the Loxocemus.
I don't have any adults yet.
Gotcha.
So I have 1.3, and I have seen DOR Loxocemus in Costa Rica, so I know how big they can get, and they can get huge. So I'm guessing I'm at least 2 years away. I mean, they will eat every day, but they grow so slow.
Yeah,
they're just like it's just taken forever.
Well, that's like the rubber boas. I know that it's going to be a long time before my rubber boa babies are going to be able to produce rubber boa babies. They just
I'm hoping that I don't age out before these things are ready to breed, because I really want to try to figure them out. I did those Calabar burrowing pythons.
I've got a 2.1 of those, and I'm hoping at one day that something happens.
So I can tell you how to breed them real quick.
What's the?
I had them at our old house in the garage, a pair in a 20-gallon long aquarium with 6 inches of orchid bark. And it was whatever our ambient temperatures were. And I think they would get up to like 89 degrees.
Yeah.
In the summer, bone dry with a water bowl. I walked by with a pitcher of water to go outside to water a plant. And just for whatever sake, it was like October, I just dumped half the pitcher in the cage. Almost flooded the cage, and they were locked up 30 minutes later.
Oh, geez. My problem right now is my female.
So there you go. There's my advice on breeding Calabars.
My female doesn't want to eat for me for some reason. The males. So I've found feeding them. So I moved them, all 3 of them, into one big like V70 tub with a thick layer of cocoa core and bark and so they can burrow. And when I feed them, I just put a cup of pinky mice and pinky rats in there. I'm like, here you go. And they just eat on their own. But she doesn't seem to want to eat as much. Like the males get to them. So I don't know. I'm having trouble getting her to want to eat for me. But
Are these wild caught, right? Imported?
2 are. One is a captive hatched. It was from a wild caught.
Okay. Yeah, because back in the day when I got mine, it was Exotic Pets here in Las Vegas. Ken Foose, rest in peace, another good man gone way too soon. I had a hell of a time getting them started, and what I finally figured out is he had rodent racks in the back of his store, and I would go get some of the nastiest soiled litter from his rat tubs.
Yeah.
And thaw out hopper mice in that ammonia shit soiled litter, and they pound them.
That's so gross.
Yeah, because they're a weird little. They go into the burrows and eat entire litters of babies.
Oh, so they're rubber boas. They're African rubber boas is what they are.
Exactly. That's how I feed my rubber boas. I dump a handful of pinkies in for them, and I just let them eat a handful of pinkies instead of feeding them a larger meal.
Yeah, they're really cool because they're like evolutionarily, they're like a bridge between a live bearer and an egg layer.
Yeah.
Because by the time they lay their eggs, the embryos are about 2/3 developed. The incubation period for the eggs, I may be off, but was less than 60 days.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So most of the development is done internally, but yet they're like in between an egg layer and a live bearer. Right in between it, which I think is fascinating.
I do. There's a couple of Samboa species that
they're huge when they're born. They're huge.
Really?
They only have like 3 eggs, but the babies are ginormous. And eating machines. They're fantastic.
Just going through some of the more chat here. Jeff Fredericks, you need to get an intern. So when your son moves out, just get you an intern.
William Tell volunteer.
William Tell did volunteer to be an intern. Jeff also said he thinks Jamaicans remind him of a poor man's Tanzania.
Yeah, they're a lot more hyper. They're a lot more. They're a much more nervous snake.
That's so. Kristen said, if you think viper boas come out small, you should try a day-old Solomon Island ground boa.
That's what I was talking about when I had to go get those lizards. I mean, they could eat like an adult banded gecko from the desert as a newborn baby, which I couldn't believe.
That's crazy.
They looked like an anaconda that just ate 2 capybaras. And you'd think for sure they were going to gorge them up. That's too big an item. There's no way they can hold that thing down, and they did. It's just amazing.
She said the record for Solomon Island ground was 110 babies. That's just ridiculous. That tells me that a lot of fucking babies die in the wild.
Super high mortality. Yeah, feeding a lot of storks and egrets.
Yeah,
whatever their equivalent bird is over there.
Oh, that's too many babies. All right, I want to get to the question real quick
we haven't hit anything on Facebook.
So the question this week was: do or would you cohabitate your pairs year round, or just during breeding? Why or why not? So I want to go through the answers, and then this was your question, so I want to get your opinion on it too, and kind of comment on some of these. So let's go through these real quick. Our buddy Jack from the Netherlands, who's coming to visit in November. I don't know. He's coming to visit. And we're taking him to places.
October, because we have fall break.
Yeah. So
I was like, wait, no, I know this answer.
So Jack, when you come from the Netherlands, we're taking you to go to cool places. He says, I keep all my snakes separated. It's easier for feeding them, especially big berms. Only when it's breeding season, I put them together. His leopard geckos, I keep in a group. I used to do that when we bred leopard geckos. 1.3, but they have a big enclosure with a lot of hiding spots at different levels. Our buddy Drew Schultz, who owns the Learning Zoo, says, I do mostly because I know that my animals have the space to live together full time and get away from each other when they want. It's easier and less stressful to avoid introductions every year, or unless someone needs to be separated or triggered for breeding. Allison Harris said, my spotted pythons cohab for 3 to 4 months for cooling and breeding, but for the sake of the female, I wouldn't leave them together all the time. Laura Vinsel said, I keep them mainly separated for ease of feeding and monitoring health, which, again, if you're not, for a lot of people not breeding, that's much easier. You can monitor that stuff, but I get that. And then Nathan said, I would think it's okay for most species of snakes. He said lizards he probably wouldn't because they seem grumpy towards each other. And the main snakes I'd say no to are snake eaters, like king snakes and stuff. So all of that was said because I asked you for a question. You want to talk about that. Where do you sit on that?
I don't cohabitate. A couple of reasons. One, because I think depending on the species, it stresses the female out because you've removed the option for the female to flee,
Yeah.
right? Like that one Sanzinia right now that doesn't want to breed, she just wanted to flee. And being in a 4-foot long box, she couldn't. So, the other main reason why, there's 3 main reasons. That's one. The second is when you're spending 9 months of the year prepping your animals for hopefully a successful reproduction. When I introduce this, same thing with the barneck scrubs, I'm talking about boas now for me, not colubrids.
Yeah.
But it worked for the, you put a male in, like I'm breeding Ruschenbergs right now. You put a male in, they copulate. If you leave them there, it's like the boxing match, you're at round 6 and they both go to their neutral corners and they seem to just sit there for a few days. By not cohabbing, when I put a male in and I get a successful lock, I can take a note of it. And I can chart what's going on. But I can take that same male, so I'll leave them in. If I don't see them tied up within 24 hours, or after they're done being locked, I'll pull the male for 2 or 3 days, put him back in, and he'll act like he's never seen her before. It seems to renew the ardor of the male. And then again, it's also just for record keeping. So I can look back over my results for my breeding season typically runs October, November till March or April. But also feeding, there's no way I'm not going to I have to sit out there and wait. If I've got a pair of Sanzinia in the same cage or Ruschenbergs in the same cage, the stuff that I'm working with, Hortulanus in the same cage, I feed them at the same time. Now I have to sit there and wait for them to finish.
Yeah.
Before I don't want to come back out later and see that one is, come up the ass side of a rat and kept right on going and eating the other one. It's just, I had the luxury of the cage space and, the size of collection to where I can house them separately. And so personally think it kind of stresses the females. I know, there's plenty of people that have an opposite opinion and have great results. So, all I do is what works for me. It's,
I've done both depending on what it is. My original pair of Kenyan Samboas for the longest time I kept together, and every year they'd pump out a couple of babies every year, kind of like clockwork.
Yeah.
But now, because of what I'm breeding and certain things I want to go with certain females, they stay separated, like you said, for record keeping, so I know who did what and who was paired. They stay separated. I'm growing up my rubber boas. Well, I originally had 2 pairs, and then one a couple years ago, coming out of brumation, a male died on me after 8, and then it died. But the other pair is still living together, but they're still young. They're not trying to breed. There's no stress that they're still pretty young. But I do separate when I'm feeding because for as calm as rubber boas get, some of my rubber boas get super excited when there's food.
Yeah.
It was fun for a long time. They would not take it off tongs, but I've got one now that I could tong feed, and she'll have it down by the time I go get the other one ready to feed her. She's quick.
I do cohab my Baja rats year round. They're the only ones I do.
Yeah.
Right now they're courting. It's breeding season for them. The male is completely off feed. It's kind of funny because he waits until she's about half done with a mouse and shoots out and bangs her while she's preoccupied. and I'm telling you,
that's hilarious.
It's happened too many times over too many years for it to just be
a coincidence.
Waiting to wine and dine her, and then
that's funny.
No, he's letting me pay for the check.
Preoccupied.
That's right. And he's letting me. He gets the date, and I pay for the check. It's a good deal for him. But when they're both on feed, they eat so fast that I don't have to sit there and babysit them. Some of these arboreal boas, they'll hammer a rodent and just sit there, 10 minutes before they finally turn around. It's just, I'm too hyper to sit still that long.
I get
Yeah.
that.
And I'll even set a reminder on my phone, like 7 minutes later, go check, because you have this much time invested in the animals. A very simple thing that you can prevent, you should have prevented. I'd rather not look back with regret.
Yeah. So speaking of cohabbing, I posted several videos from Camp Kennan this week on our Facebook page, because he went to a couple of our favorite places. He went to Reptilandia over in Johnson City. And Reptilandia, if anybody's ever questioned cohabbing, go to Reptilandia. But they cohab in cages the size of some people's houses. So it's a little different. So like go
some people's houses. What kind of house are you living in? Because some of these exhibits are freaking huge.
Like the croc monitor cage.
Jeez.
So if anybody hadn't seen it, and we've talked about Reptilandia, we've had Ari on here and talked about it. Go check out the video we posted where they went there, and check out the 2-story enormous croc monitor cage where there's 2 male croc monitors, a female in there, a couple of sailfin dragons, all doing great. But again, that's space, and that's one thing a lot of people can't get. I think cohabbing is tricky because space is the issue. When space is closer to nature, it's easy to cohab. When space is a 4-foot cage, it's not really cohabbing as much as you just house 2 snakes in a 4-foot cage.
One thing I just remembered, and I do have to go in a little bit here. I do combat my Sanzinia males with the female in the cage. I will put 2.3 in the same cage together. It's always chaperoned.
Yes.
They've never won. It's a big sumo wrestling match, but it is immediate. The males go after each other immediately. Yep. And
is there any biting, or is it just pinning them down?
It's just entwining, but they're spurring each other, which is really interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
The same, but the pheromone emission must just be off the charts, because the females go ballistic too. They're not the males are wrestling on one end of the cage, and the female is just whipping around the cage, and it just must be nuts. But I've noticed in all my herping, like especially this time of year, or a little earlier in the desert, you come across like a female western diamondback rattlesnake under a mesquite bush. I can almost guarantee you, if you walk concentric circles away from that female, you'll find 1, if not 3 males. Just wait.
Really?
Yeah. They're like, hey, dude, she's not ready yet. We know she's not ready yet, but we're just waiting. So I like putting males in with the females earlier than even when I can palpate follicles, because I just think it lets them know. It kind of gets them started in the whole switch into follicle development. That there's a male nearby, and the combating really seems to jack up all the participants' enthusiasm a lot.
That's interesting.
Back in the day, before I had big enough groups of both, I would put a male western in with a pair of easterns just to get the combat going.
And they would still combat.
Oh yeah.
Huh, yep. That's cool.
And they would ignore the female. This is just, they anchor their tails, and they just go, just like you see videos of rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
They anchor their tails and just keep going, just trying to push the other one down. And I'll let it go. I'll let it go on for like, I've even opened the cage, the ground floor cage, and they've fallen out onto the floor of my snake building and kept right on going. It's just amazing. So I recommend that with them. I thought about doing it with the Ruschenbergs, but I just don't know how. I know that the Sanzini won't bite each other.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to risk.
Be a gnarly bite from those guys.
Yeah. And it's not fair to put them in those kind of situations.
Yeah.
Just to serve my agenda. Really, I'll just have to wait and see what happens.
That's interesting. I've done that with Samboas. I'll put 2 males in sometimes to get the Samboas going. They don't really fight, but I found though, if there's 2 in there, it does make them go, hey, I need to hurry up and do this before the other one does it.
Yep. And that's why, again, back to not cohabbing, when you pull the males for a few days, you put them back in, they lock up, you can take a note, and at least you know where you are in the progression.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean shit in the long run, but at least you know.
One other thing I want to throw out there for folks that are listening. I know I just said I posted some Camp Kim videos of Reptilandia, which, by the way, if anybody has not been to Reptilandia in Johnson City, Texas, if you're a reptile person, you should go. Just go watch the video. And it doesn't even really give you a sense of how amazing that place is as far as reptiles, but it's great. But the other thing I also posted while Camp Kennan was over here, and apparently he was like, had to have driven by our house at some point because he went to our buddy Chris Dieter's crocodile encounter, which we talk about Chris all the time. Oh, I haven't mentioned this episode. Chris Dieter has 2 Komodo dragons. I know I mention that every episode. I think I have to mention it every episode for him. He has 2 Komodo dragons, but they show him in the video. Kennan gets to feed them. You get to see them, but you get to see Chris Dieter's reptile or crocodile encounter and all of his crocodiles and his natural, his, if you're used to seeing crocodiles at a zoo, that is not the way you're going to see a crocodile encounter. He has very natural ponds where they're able to burrow and dig, and you're not going to see concrete ponds. It's a great place. So 2 places in Texas if you like reptiles. Go to Crocodile Encounter and go to Reptilandia. And you can go watch those videos over on our Facebook page. Camp Kennan went to both of them, so I posted those videos for everybody to see. So I wanted to throw that out there. We've come up over 2 hours.
I was going to say,
Yep.
I got a kid to make sure she's showered and in bed for finals tomorrow.
That's true.
I gotta eat some dinner.
Yes. Bill, if people want to talk reptiles to you, or at least follow and see your awesome Sanzinia or your king snakes or anything else, how can they follow you?
I don't do Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Just Bill Hughes in Las Vegas, I guess.
Yeah, and if you're a reptile person and you're friends with other reptile people, go search Bill Hughes. He'll be the one that shares friends with you because somebody you know is probably following him.
Probably. Yeah. I do have that Desert Okie Reptiles page that I don't really update much. I probably
but there's some cool stuff on it.
I need to go look at that and see maybe some fresh pictures, that kind of stuff. But I hope I was entertaining enough for a couple hours.
This was awesome.
Great. Everybody in the chat was super happy about this.
Good. And
yeah,
I said, I'm happy. I'm happy to help anybody. All I can share is what's worked and what hasn't worked for me. That's it. You know, I'm happy to, and I'm always able to. I can be corrected. And if someone has a better idea than me, I'm never too proud to try something else.
I don't want to say that that's a difference in the hobby because there's been people in both camps from the 70s to now, but there are some people that get into the hobby and then a week later they're now an expert and they'll tell you everything on how to keep it. And you've been doing this forever, and there's no way you'll say you're an expert on any of this, right? So that's the way it should be.
And we didn't have care sheets, and we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have the resources that I enjoy today, and that all of us enjoy today. We had a lot of losses, a lot of heartbreaks.
A lot of things died.
Still have a lot of heartbreaks. I mean, there's still the Mother Nature likes to rear up and slap us in the ass and remind us who's in charge a lot. And the best thing we can do is talk. Not criticize, not opine, just talk. And if you don't like what you hear, you don't have to use it. If you do like what someone has to say, and give it a try. Well,
it's funny you talk about there were so many losses. I always think ball pythons. I think how many ball pythons died so someone can have their 17 gene whatever ball python they have today. So many of them died before that because they just wouldn't eat, wouldn't breed, nothing. And now you can breed them in a cardboard box in a closet if you wanted to.
Once they got them figured out, that's right.
So that's cool to watch you try and do that with Sanzinia. Watch you try to do it with Russian Burger. I try to figure them out. There's not more people need to get into these fringe species because the more people that do it, the faster we'll learn these things. We'll learn the do's and don'ts much faster. It'll
make the reptile shows a lot more interesting.
Yes, that is true.
It really will. And if you're dealing with stuff that's being imported, you have to understand the risk you're taking. And you have to understand the risk of high mortality. There's going to be high mortality rates, and you make sure that your anticipations aren't set too high.
Yeah.
And it's always a crapshoot.
Yes,
it always is. But I'm going to sign off, guys.
Yes. With that, I would say goodbye to everybody. Bill, just hang on 1 second. Everybody else, will see you next week with somebody. I've got somebody for next week. I think we're on
Monday.
We're on Monday. So everybody tune in next Monday. Thanks, Bill. Thanks everybody for watching, and good night. Let me log off the online one because everybody can still see us on